So this video is all about flooring. I'm Rallis,
I'm Katie.
and we're going to talk to you about our fixer-upper house, our remodel of our bathroom, and we're getting into flooring. Now, part of the reasons that we're so hung up on the flooring is because when we bought this house, this fixer-upper, this diamond in the rough, it had carpet everywhere, and it was, cat pee carpet. Yeah. So we moved in. We're like, no, all this carpet's got to go. We ripped it up, but the floor was also uneven due to some. We thought it was roots growing up underneath the house and actually pushing up the slab, but it turns out that it is
Earthquake damage.
Yes.
We're along a fault line a little bit.
Yeah. The San Andreas fault.
Close to it.
Yeah. And so it turns out that when they poured the slabs here originally, it's not like they made them really level and put down a bedrock foundation.
In the 40s.
Yeah, and made it all really nice and
put
rebar and mesh.
No,
and
rebar.
They didn't do any of that. And the floor, when they poured it, there would be thick areas and thin areas. And so we are going to put in self-leveling concrete. And we've done that in the bathroom. It's not really self-leveling. And in smaller areas, like in a bathroom where you've got a toilet and a shower, it's tough because there's a large tool, a squeegee, and it's hard to get that into those areas to self-level it out.
Self-leveling concrete isn't perfect, and we ended up with a high spot in the floor. So Rallis has a grinder attached to a dust collection system and a shop vac. This contraption is pretty awesome. It's really loud, but there's almost no dust. He's grinding down the high spot so the floor is more level for the vinyl planks we're using.
Luxury vinyl tile. It's called Lifeproof. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason we bought it was because the guy at the big box store we went to took a utility knife to it and just went at it and said, see, you can't damage this stuff. And it's really cool. It snaps together. It's waterproof. It's really durable stuff, and we're really hard on floors.
Yeah, we're really hard. You'll see, we drop a lot of things.
I wear combat
things
boots
in. Yeah.
that are filled with rocks and dust and dirt and screws and nails and all kinds.
Broken glass. A lot of broken glass ends up outside.
Yeah, I don't
Just
know.
blows in.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, go ahead and subscribe and the notification bell so you know when our new videos are coming out.
The floor is ready, but I need to get the door frame ready too. This needs to be undercut so the flooring can slide under it.
What do we have to do under there in the wood trim?
Oh, undercutting.
Undercutting, yes.
Yeah, so that it slides under the door jamb, because you can't really put a baseboard around the door jamb. Wouldn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. These tiles are meant to float on the subfloor. They shouldn't be glued down, and they need a 1/4-inch expansion gap around the perimeter. The baseboard will cover the gap at the walls, but you can't put baseboard at the door jamb, and you don't want to see the expansion gap, so undercutting is the magic solution, and it's super easy. You just take an oscillating multi-tool, which henceforth shall be known as Buzzy, put down a scrap piece of flooring, it's going to get ruined, and slide Buzzy along the flooring to cut the door jamb at the correct height. Easy peasy. Normally you would cut all the way through the wood, but I wanted to leave a bit in there, so I'm breaking it away about a 1/2 inch deep. Rallis made this awesome tool I'm using. It's just a flathead screwdriver with a 90-degree bend, but it works great to fish out the pieces of wood. You can see that the flooring slides right under the door jamb, hiding the expansion gap. One last thing before installing the flooring is to plan it out a little bit. I checked where the planks would end at the shower and the door to make sure there wouldn't be any slivers of vinyl, and it seemed like everything would be good, starting with a full-width tile at the wall. Plus, in order to get the flooring under the toilet drain flange, the plank will need to be split in half right across the middle, so I'd rather have the small seam at the split instead of the long seam. Either way, it's going to be a squeeze. I'm starting with a full plank at the left corner. I got this installation kit, and I'm using the 1/4-inch spacers along the wall to keep the expansion gap in there. The next tile will need to be cut, so I'm flipping it the wrong way, lining the left edge up to the wall on the right, making a mark where it hits the other plank, and using a speed square to mark the cut line. I also mark an X on the side that will be cut off. I'm using pencil so I can erase the marks and use the cut-off piece to start the next row. I want the planks to be staggered by thirds so the seams aren't too close together. Our shower tiles are staggered the same way. I think it's the most pleasing on the eye. Rallis is setting up the saw to cut the vinyl tiles. You can use cheaper tools or even just a blade, but this was a good excuse to splurge on a nice saw. For the next row of planks, I'm going to need a template for the toilet drain. I'm measuring the diameter of the flange. The flooring has to go under the flange and basically butt up to the screws, so I'm also measuring how far under the flange the flooring should go. On some contractor's paper, I'm using a compass to draw a circle with a 7 1/4 inch diameter based on my measurements. Now I have a template or stencil for the circular cut. The cut plank gets clicked and hammered into place with the 1/4 inch spacers against the walls. I'm making sure my template is a good size. Then I check how long the remnant plank from the first row is and mark it on the template for where the seam will go. I want it close to the center so it only curves in one direction, and I'm about 3/8 of an inch past that, so that should be fine. I folded my template on the marked seam line. Then I measure the center of the drain from the edge of the first plank and mark it on the remnant piece. I'm tracing the partial circle onto the plank. I check my measurements one more time. I'm a little nervous, but everything looks good. Now I can bring it to Rallis. He's clamped it to the table and is using a jigsaw to cut the circle freehand. There's just barely enough room to swivel the piece around the drain. I'm using this tool to hammer the planks together. The directions say to use the staggered side, but for me that side always jumps off the plank and sometimes takes a chunk with it. So I use this side instead and I get much better results. On the next plank I marked the circle with Sharpie so it's easier to see. Getting down to the third row and we've hit a big problem. The floor still isn't level enough. I have to take the planks back apart, which isn't as easy as other people have made it seem. The grooves in the plank are really brittle and they do break easily. One of the planks was damaged in removal. The others came apart eventually, and Rallis used a grinder to level out the high spot in the floor even more. We also decided to patch this low spot. Rallis painted on a coat of concrete bonding adhesive that's been thinned 50-50 with water. He prepared a small batch of Quickcrete and is painting on a second coat of the bonding adhesive. Tapping the bucket helps bring air bubbles to the surface. Once the adhesive is partially dry, he pours the Quikrete mixture into the low area and uses a chip brush to spread it around. Then I came in with a straight board to level it off to the rest of the floor. I'm using a damp brush to feather the edges out even more. Then a damp rag to wipe up all the excess and drips. After an hour, it was dry enough to get back to the flooring. I reinstalled the planks around the toilet drain. Normally you would lay the next plank with one side lifted at an angle to wedge the tongue and grooves together, but with the flange there I have to start the planks flat, which makes it a lot harder to get them to click together. Eventually the gaps close and I can continue down the bathroom. I'm feeling each seam to make sure it's flush. They should be completely closed up, no gap at all. If you see a gap, keep hammering it together or take it apart and check for debris in the seam. This long tool I'm hammering on is a pull bar because now I'm too close to the shower tile to use the tapping block. Here's the corner of the shower curb. It was around this point that I heard a crash. I was measuring some board, and I heard a crash, and I ignored it.
As you would, of course.
There was nothing happening in the bathroom. I was like, why would there be a noise from there? But then there was another crash. Okay. And then I did go in there, but I don't know why there would have been two crashes, because only one thing fell. So that is a mystery that has not been solved.
Okay. So what crashed?
A skull fell off of the mirror. We had used hot glue, and we thought it would be fine, but we used really, really super duper hot lights.
We were using incandescent lights in the coffin mirror because I didn't want really powerful wattage. And when I went to our big box store, we only had 40 watt bulbs. I really wanted 25 watt bulbs. Because how many lights are in there? Is 1, 2,
8.
3, 8? So 8 times 40 is how many watts?
320?
320? I think it's more than that. That's okay. It got really freaking hot, and it melted the hot glue. And
it didn't completely melt it. It softened it enough that the weight of the just one skull just went boop.
Yeah.
Right off.
And luckily, it hit the ground, and the teeth popped out.
And the Lifeproof flooring was already in, so it didn't break the skull. We'll deal with that later. I'm checking the design on each plank to keep similar looking ones apart. This area between the shower and the wall is narrow enough that we can use the damaged piece from when I took the floor apart earlier. Both ends get cut off and it fits just perfectly. I've left a small gap around the shower. That will get filled with silicone caulk so it's watertight. Here you can see how I like to angle the plank and hammer it down into place. Then use the tapping block to seal up the gaps. Now as I get to the wall by the door, I see I made a mistake in my earlier planning. We need a teeny tiny sliver of a plank here. This is generally a no-no, but we didn't have much choice with the placement of the toilet drain. It's in the corner, so I'm not really worried about it, and most of it will be covered by baseboard. The next plank will jut straight out and go under the door jamb, but this is as far as we'll go right now. We have to self-level this entire bedroom still. That won't happen until after the kitchen is remodeled, so maybe around the end of 2022. I taped a scrap piece of flooring over the last plank so the tongue and grooves don't get broken. And I think this is as far as I'll go with this video. I'll show you how we installed the baseboard and fixed the mirror next week. Thanks for watching!